Made national headlines. A sniper went on a killing spree at a downtown hotel. And today, a local historian and filmmaker takes a look back at how the Howard Johnson sniper incident changed the course of the city's history. A nice January day, people walking, talking, and driving down Loyola Avenue. A very drastic difference from what this hotel, the Holiday Inn in the CBD, formerly known as Howard Johnson's, looked like on January 7th, 1973.
It was very cold day. It almost snowed that day.
Good evening. For 2 days, a Howard Johnson's hotel in downtown New Orleans has been the scene of a search for a sniper.
Today was a very tragic day in New Orleans history. It was 50 years ago today that you had the Howard Johnson sniper incident that terrorized the city for almost 2 days.
This man, 23-year-old Mark Essex, was a black nationalist who enlisted in the Navy and went AWOL. Essex decided he wanted to go on a killing spree.
He was 5'4". He was in the Navy. He got into some trouble there. He was being picked on, bullied. Systemic racism was one of the faults that caused him to do this. There was shortly after that at Southern University, there was the shooting where 2 students got killed and no one was fingered. They were shot by the sheriff's office, and that made him cross the line.
The Howard Johnson sniper would take 7 lives, 3 of them police officers, including a deputy superintendent, Louis Sergo. Mark Essex is also said to have killed 2 police officers in the days before the hotel shootings. He himself was gunned down by sharpshooters at the end of a 13-hour standoff. But even after his death, there were fears that he hadn't been acting alone. That's reflected in the reporting of then news director Phil Johnson.
Whatever it is, 1 or 2 or 3 people literally had this town stop dead in its tracks for the past 2 days. And certainly living in fear, policemen, of course, for the past 7 or 8 or 9 days since that first sniping took place.
Even today, if you talk to people that was involved, they really don't know. Some say it was 1, some say it was more than 1, at least 2.
Anytime you have a sniping going on, you don't know where the next shot's coming from. Anytime you have sniper situation, you have no control of it. You have no idea when the next shot's going to come. It's terrifying.
That gunman, Mark Essex, was shot and killed hours after the standoff began using a military helicopter and sharpshooters inside the aircraft and on nearby buildings.
By the way, when the autopsy was done, it revealed that his body had more than 200 gunshot wounds.
Welcome back, family. This is the Still Standing podcast, where we have real conversations about life after service and the unseen battles that our veterans face. Now, today we have myself, Christina Augustine. I am a peer support specialist here at the Hope Center in New Orleans, and my partner is
Robert Augustine. I'm a peer support specialist.
And he is really my partner in life as well. I know y'all thinking it's the same last name. What's going on here? Yes, that is my husband, so I'm not available. Sorry, guys. And then our special guests here with us today are...
Hello, my name is Gary Lewis. I'm not married to Jocelyn Lewis. We are co-workers. I work here at Hope Center Incorporated. I'm a case manager of outreach.
Hi, everybody, and thank you for joining us. I'm Dr. Jocelyn Lewis, also known as Dr. J, and I'm the healthcare navigator for Hope Center. As Mr. Lewis said, we're not related. I'm not a medical professional. I have a PhD in industrial hygiene. So I tell you now, I can't tell you what that strange rash is on your thigh. The questions I've been
we don't want to know about it. Yeah. We don't want to know.
Go to your primary care doctor, please.
And I'm loving the flower. I'm loving the flower.
Well,
all right,
I disagree with that thing about she's not a doctor, because she came in here and worked on my computer and it's just fine.
Okay, well, she's a different kind of doctor then.
Yeah, we're going with that.
That's why she's Dr. J.
That's right. I like that.
All right, so last episode, we talked about transitioning from military life to civilian life. It is a big difference. We all know this, those of us that have been through it. So this week, we're going to talk a little deeper, and we're going to talk about PTSD. Before we came on, you saw some clips or heard some clips about a day in 1973 that just shook the entire core of the city of New Orleans. And that was the New Orleans sniper shooter, also known as Mark Essex. In the media, the headlines that, when we see things on TV, or we used to read in the newspaper, or we see things online, the headlines always talk about the horror in that moment on that day. But what's not talked about is the deeper story of the mental health issue, the trauma that led to that day. We want to talk a little bit about Mark Essex. And I'm going to be reading from my notes here because he was a very interesting young man. Mark James Robert Essex was born in Emporia, Kansas on August the 12th, 1949. He was the second of 5 children, and they were a very close-knit family. They went to church every Sunday or whatever day they worshiped. They were very devout in their beliefs, and it was a 2-parent household. So he came from a very normal background, what we say is normal, in the 1940s. And the town that he grew up in, Emporia, Kansas, had a long tradition of racial harmony. So if he ever had to deal with any type of racism, it would have been very seldom, if ever. Now, Mark Essex went on to Emporia State University, but he only did 1 semester after he graduated from high school, and he was still trying to figure himself out. So that's when he went to work in manufacturing, a meat packing plant, the same one that his father worked in. And like I said, he was trying to figure himself out. So he considered joining the Army. Actually, he decided to enlist in the Army, and his father, who was a World War II veteran, told him instead of going in the Army, join the Navy, because the Navy has better jobs that you can transition into the civilian world with. So that's what he did. He went into the Navy. My Navy man up there. He went into the Navy on January 13th, 1969, and on a 4-year contract, and he was stationed at the Naval Air Station at Imperial Beach, California. He was a dental technician. Now, I always thought that he was a sniper. I mean, you would think, but he was a dental technician, and his supervisor, Lieutenant Robert Hatcher, and he became really close friends. And what people found very surprising is that his supervisor was a white guy. And it was so surprising because on the day that he was shooting, the day that he killed all these people, he was talked about only killing whites. So while he was in the Navy, he experienced a lot of racism in various different ways. Some that were just outright blatant, and some that were kind of, hidden and, like on a slick, that kind of stuff. So this was a new experience for him. And during this process, he became kind of militant. He really, he befriended a guy named Rodney Frank. And Rodney Frank was from New Orleans. And while I was researching this, when I read Rodney Frank, I was like, oh, I wonder if he was related to Antoinette Frank. But anyway, that's another story, not for this podcast. So anyway, Mark Essex befriended Rodney Frank, and Rodney Frank, who was a self-proclaimed Black militant, he told him to start reading stuff about Huey Newton and the other guy that started the Black Panther Party. And Mark Essex became very, very, very militant at that time. He started disliking white people more and more. And in August of 1970, he got into a physical altercation with a white NCO after hearing this man say, and I quote, "How beautiful it must have been decades past when," and I don't know if I can say this word, so an N-word, "went to sea, it was below decks in the galley." Now that was just provocation right there. So he decked the white NCO. And instead of getting in trouble Instead of being reprimanded, the both of them came to a compromise. Well, because it was a white sailor of a higher rank, a senior rank, that he hit, he started getting more racial harassment from other white sailors and white NCOs. And this just made things worse for him. And it got to the point where he started taking sedatives. Let me see, 2 months later, that was in August. So 2 months later, in October, he went AWOL. And for those of you that are watching that have not served or do not know what AWOL means, it means absent without leave. That means that you are considered a deserter. You left without permission. So he went AWOL, and he remained AWOL until November 16th of 1970. Now, in November of 1970, his parents, talked him into turning himself in, because they were like, look, you can't live looking over your shoulder all your life. You need to turn yourself in. So he agreed to turn himself in. But before he did, the one person that he called was his Lieutenant Hatcher, who was his immediate supervisor, the white lieutenant. And he explained to him why he went AWOL, because of the harassment, because of the racism, and he just couldn't take it anymore. So then he was court-martialed, and during the court, after the court-martial, after his for a charge of desertion, after his punishment time, he was given a general discharge for general unsuitability. And that was February 11th of 1971, and he was 21 years old. Now, all this did was just upset him even more, because he felt like the racial tension had never been addressed, and he was unfairly categorized and stereotyped as being unsuitable because he went AWOL, because he just couldn't handle it anymore. Now, that brings us to 1972. Essex moved back and forth from New Orleans to Emporia several different times. When he was put out of the military in 1971, he went home to Emporia. And then eventually one day he just packed up his stuff, didn't tell anybody he was going, and he just came to New Orleans. And they think that, so they speculate, they don't know for sure, that he came looking for his friend Rodney Frank. Well, it doesn't say whether or not he hooked up with Rodney or not, but in 1972, he was living on Dryads, Uptown. Told y'all about them Uptown people. So I'm an Uptowner too, y'all. Don't call in and hate on us.
Too late. Too late. You already called him.
So in November of 1972, he learned that two 20-year-old Black students at Southern University, who were in a civil rights demonstration on campus, were shot to death by East Baton Rouge Parish sheriff's deputies. And that infuriated him. And from that day on, he wrote to his parents and explained how he felt such a hatred for white people, so on and so forth. And he felt like police were trying to, he needed to act against police oppression. So on Christmas Day, and I'm including this because I want y'all to hear what I'm saying. On Christmas Day, he had dinner with a fellow student, because he had enrolled in school while he was here. He had dinner with a fellow student and his family, and then he called each one of his family members. He called home and made sure that he talked to every single person individually in his family. That's a telltale sign right there. This is on Christmas Day. Then he gave away most of his possessions. He started giving things away to his neighbors and to all his acquaintances, and nobody caught on to this. And he told his neighbors that he was getting ready to move back home to Emporia. Now, somebody should have asked, well, won't you need your stuff when you move back home? You're giving me a TV. Ain't you going to need your TV when you get back home? You still need a TV. But nobody caught on. Nobody paid much attention to it. Then on New Year's Eve, December 31st, 1972, he parked his car walked up Perdido and hid behind parked cars in the parking lot across from the county jail. And he started shooting. He was intent on killing police. And he ended up killing a cadet who was on duty that was about to get off duty. And this cadet just happened to be black. This is the only black person he killed that day. And he said that he did not care what color a person was if they were in that blue uniform. So he killed one and injured one officer. From there, with all the commotion, he was able to get away. He hopped over the fence and ran across the interstate over to the other side into the warehouses, and he broke into a warehouse. Now, when he broke into that warehouse, it activated an alarm. So a K9 unit responded to that alarm. When the K9 unit responded to that alarm, it was 2 officers and a dog, of course. One officer got out of the car, and as he was going to the back door to let the K9, the dog out, Essex shot him and killed him. Then he started shooting up the car, and the other officer was able to pull his partner back into the car and radio for help. Well, when you radio for help and say police down, everybody and their grandpappy showing up. So a whole bunch of police officers showed up, but as they searched and searched, they couldn't find him. He was gone. Come to find out, he had broken into a church. The reason they know he broke into the church is because the pastor of this church walked into the church at 9 o'clock at night and saw a young black man standing there with a rifle. And as we like to do, he turned around and he ran, and he went and called the authorities. He called the police. Well, when the police got to the church, Essex was gone, but they saw blood. So they knew he had been hurt some kind of way. Okay, now, all of this started on New Year's Eve of 1972. So we come into the whole night. Police are searching for him. They're doing house-to-house searches, and they're upset. They are angry, and they're showing their anger to people. And so because so many people were calling in saying, look, your office is out there going crazy, they called off the search around 9 o'clock the next morning. That's New Year's Day. Now, if anybody remembers anything, anybody 50 and older should remember the sniper shootings from that day. And all of the sniper shootings that we remember that we saw on TV, I was a little girl when all that happened, and watching it on TV, that was 7 days later. That was on January 7th. So where was he between January 1st and January 7th? Well, I'll tell you, he was living in the church. They know he was in the church at least up until January 3rd, because from the church, he walked across the street to a grocery store, bought some supplies and some first aid stuff, and then went back across the street. Well, the owner of the grocery store said he looked kind of suspicious, and he saw his hand had blood on it. So he knew he was up to no good. So he sent one of his clerks to go follow him. And the guy said he saw him go into the church. So the grocer, the owner of the grocery store, called the police and told the police. That was on January 3rd. Police got to the church. Essex was gone again. How did he know every time the police was coming? He must have had a radio or something. We don't know. It doesn't say. But he knew. And every single time he got away. So they don't know exactly where he was between January 3rd and January 7th. But the morning of January 7th, he went back to the grocery store, yelled at the owner of the grocery store, and when he turned around, he shot him. Then from there, he went outside and he carjacked someone. It was a black man that he carjacked, so he didn't kill him, but he told him, look, if you resist, I will kill you. I don't want to, but I will. He took that man's car and drove to the downtown Howard Johnson's. He parked the car in the garage and then went up the fire escape and tried to get into the hotel. Every time he tried to get into the hotel, nobody would let him in. He would see the maids in the hallway and he would tell them, let me in, and they would tell him, no, we can't. And they would go and tell authorities, they'd go tell the manager, look, somebody's trying to get in off from the fire escape. Somebody's trying to get in the doors, and he has a rifle in his hand. Well, he finally got in on the 18th floor. When he got in on the 18th floor, that's when he ran into a white couple. It was a doctor and his wife, 28-year-old doctor and his 25-year-old wife. And he killed them instantly. He shot the man in the chest, and as the woman went to cradle her husband, she said, please don't kill him. And she cradled her husband. He shot her at the base of her skull. Then he went into their room, and that's where he set a fire. He soaked, I don't know, y'all probably won't remember, but those of us 50 and older, we remember he soaked a bunch of phone books with lighter fluid and set them on fire and set them underneath the curtains so that the smoke would be going out of the windows. But all the curtains were were fire retardant, so they wouldn't catch on fire. So it was just the books that were at blaze, right? Well, people started calling in about the fire that they see coming out of the Howard Johnson Hotel. Fire department shows up. So he went on from room to room, went into a lot of empty rooms, setting fires just to get attention. He went down to the 10th floor. When I say this man did a lot, he went down to the 10th floor, set a couple of fires. In the process, he ran into the general manager of the hotel. He shot and killed him. He ran into the assistant manager of the hotel. He shot and killed him. Finally, he ran and ended up on the roof. And when he ended up on the roof, because he shot another hotel guest, just killed a lot of people. When he ended up on the roof, that's where he started picking people off. As the firemen tried to climb up the ladder to rescue people that were trying to escape the fire, they ran out on their balconies. And firemen are trying to rescue people off their balconies, and he would shoot the firemen. He shot one fireman in his shoulder. He then fell back, and there were two police officers coming up the ladder behind him. He fell back onto one police officer, and then the other police officer was able to shoot back at him. Now, mind you, he took time to lean over and shoot at this fireman. The fireman lived, however, he did lose his arm. He would not let the firemen come in to rescue anyone, and he would not let police in. Well, he killed 11 people and he wounded 14. Now, this was a day that January 7th, 1973, we look at how things are now, and it's hard to imagine back in 73, if someone was to say somebody's on top of a building, a hotel, shooting at people, we wouldn't be surprised today. But we're talking about 1973. I remember I was 5 years old when this happened, and I was watching it on TV. And I remember, I know, Rob, you said that they had shut down streets, and you were in school, and they shut down the schools and wouldn't let y'all out of school, and you were way across the city.
Yeah, well, actually, Howard Johnson is, I'm going to say about a quarter mile from what the main hospital we used back then was Charity Hospital. He was actually able to shoot as far as Charity Hospital. So people within the area of the city, a large community, were afraid. And they had right to be. He shot police behind cars. They would stick their head up. This guy, if you want to talk about PTSD at its max, that was PTSD at its max.
Yes,
and
definitely.
It started in the military.
Definitely.
So I'm saying, and I think we need to bring this full circle also. We've been talking about PTSD, and a lot of people, I guess, might have the impression that it starts when you get out of the military. No, the majority of it starts in the military. I've served Army and Navy. And statistics, I'm sorry, Christine, I'm going to let you finish your story. But it says like people who served in Iraqi and enduring freedom, 11 to 20% will come home with PTSD. In the Gulf War, veterans, about 12%. Vietnam, 30%. So this actually starts when you're in active duty. You just come home and things not going right or going well, it just further aggravates it and it escalates. So
Hmm.
yeah, I'm sorry, so that was his
No,
PTSD. Not everybody
that was,
goes to that max, but
yeah, that was a good point because this was PTSD at its max. And again, like you said, it started when he was in the military, which is where most of the trauma does start, and that's the reason we wanted to do this episode, because we didn't want people thinking that, oh, PTSD starts after you leave the service. No, that's not the truth. The trauma usually happens while you're in the service, and it just doesn't escalate until you get out of the service. And I forgot, I wanted to mention that the firefighter that he shot in the shoulder when he fell back, as they were loading him into the ambulance, this is how disturbed this young man was. As they were loading the firefighter into the ambulance, Essex shot the driver of the ambulance. So he couldn't even get taken to the hospital, which is probably what led to him losing his arm from a gunshot wound. And then, yeah, all these pages. They finally had a Marine lieutenant colonel who was stationed in Belle Chase. And that lieutenant colonel, he kind of stole, he kind of stole a helicopter. Um, he was a great pilot. He had a lot of accommodations, a lot of awards, and everybody that spoke about him said that he was a great leader. Yes, sir. I'm trying to.
when you said that was his PTSD, because I read somewhere while you were doing research, he said he was sitting at home watching this on the news and he felt he had to do something. So here again, it could be considered to some people as a good PTSD, where he had to go steal a helicopter, go pick the police up, and please continue your story.
Yeah, this lieutenant colonel, he was sitting at home watching it on the news, and he felt like he had to do something. He had to help in some kind of way, and he came up with an idea. If I grab the helicopter and get some officers up above the building, because nobody could get him, the way he was positioned and his hiding spots, no sniper could hit him. So the lieutenant colonel said, if I could get some police officers on this helicopter above him, maybe we can hit him. Well, he went up, and every time he would go up, they would fire, and they would like you see on the movies. Well, Essex would hide. There was this little cubby on the roof, and there were cubbies all over the roof at different angles. And he would hide
Stairwells.
inside the cubby. But what they didn't know, as they're shooting up the cubby, they didn't know that he had shimmied up the pole. And so he's up in the top of the cubby, and they're shooting towards the bottom of the cubby, thinking that they're hitting him. And then every time the helicopter would leave, he would run out with his rifle and shoot at the helicopter. Okay, this went on a few times, and then come to find out, as he ran out that last time, he said, "Come and get me." Waving his fist in the air, he said, "Come back and get me." And they said after it was all over, and when they searched his weapon, he only had 2 rounds left. So this was a suicide mission. And that's why I want to go back and say, that is why I talked about him calling on Christmas Day and making sure he spoke to every single member of his family, because he wanted to leave them with something to remember him by. Then giving all of his possessions away. He knew that he wanted to commit suicide. Well, okay. He knew he wanted to die by suicide, but he wanted to go out doing something that he thought was right. That being
Well,
said, when they fired on him and the police officers that were able to get up to the roof, everybody came out and started shooting him. And by the time they finished firing on Mr. Essex, he had over 200 bullet wounds in his body. his body was rippled with bullet wounds. They said that certain parts of him they had to scoop off of the roof because his body was kind of like fell apart. And I know that sounds kind of gross, but this is the reality of PTSD, its effects, and thinking about the trauma that he instilled on the people and the police officers, watching their fellow officers and people being killed or being wounded. They probably fired with anger from their trauma. So it's just an ongoing cycle. And over 200, 200 bullets is a 200 wounds is a lot. 200 that's six. And I gotta say again, this was over 200 bullet wounds. I guess the doctors just finally say, you know what, I quit. I quit. I'm done. This it's just I can't count no more.
He probably didn't feel the other 195.
And you're right. And you are so right. And as I was doing this research on Mark Essex, it dawned on me, New Year's Day 2025, we had an incident where this man drove his truck down Bourbon Street and wanted to kill as many people as he could. He was also an Army veteran. So the we don't know, like with Mark Essex, we can do a background check on him. We can find out what was going on, and there were people to talk to that could tell you and help you put the pieces together. But with Shamsud Din Bahar Jabbar, with him, we don't know anything about him. He wasn't on anybody's radar. You know, a lot of people think, oh, he's been a terrorist all his life. He was born into this, blah, blah, blah. No, this man was Black. He was born into a Christian family. His father later converted to Islam, and then he converted, not Islam, Muslim. He converted to, I don't know if I'm using the right terms, but he converted to Islam as well later on in his life. So, but he was born in Beaumont, Texas, and he served 10 years in the Army as a human resources specialist and information technology specialist. He did deploy to Afghanistan, and he was honorably discharged. He was a staff sergeant, honorably discharged. So what happened? Nobody knows. But I remembered him because, number one, it was New Year's Day. Mark Essex started on New Year's Eve, 1972, and he ended his rampage on the city on January 7th, 1973. And this guy, Mr. Jabbar, he decided to do his deed on January 1st of 2025. So I just saw some similarities, both veterans. And with this guy also, there was a third veteran. If y'all remember, the same day, New Year's Day, when Jabbar rode his truck down Bourbon Street, there was a car, the Tesla that blew up in front of the Trump hotels in Vegas. Well, that person, they never gave his name, but the person that was driving that vehicle, he rented his vehicle just like Jabbar did, and they both reportedly served at the same military base. So here we have these veterans that are doing such ugly things because of trauma that they experienced, and they get so mixed up, and you have to wonder, where did it go wrong? Now, after all of that, I know it was a lot. I know it's heavy. I just have to give a disclaimer here. We are in no way whatsoever justifying anything that these men did. But we do want to identify the untreated trauma of the PTSD that manifested in such a deeply destructive way. If untreated, PTSD can be very, very dangerous for both the individual and those around him or her. PTSD is real. It happens, and you don't even know that that's what you're going through. I know Robert can explain a little more and go into a little more detail.
Yeah, the Monk X's story resonates at home with me. Pretty much the same thing. I was doing fine in the Navy, and I disagreed with a officer from it was a warrant officer back from the Vietnam era, and he said he would get me. Next thing I know, I had a deduction and pay from E4 back down to E3. 23 days of hard labor, which means I would work my 12 hours and had full to work after that. When we got back to the States, I had a friend of mine fill my car up with gas. I loaded my bags and I left Jacksonville, Florida, and drove back here to New Orleans, explained to my parents what was going on, and they asked me what I was going to do. I said, I'm not going back. There's no defense. There's no one you can get to help you. These are officers. And a warrant officer is a guy that's been up the ranks and he's made cheap. His next step is warrant officer, which is between an officer and an enlisted person. So I did the 30 days, went AWOL. My dad said the same thing most Texas people said. Go and turn yourself in, man, before you get yourself straight and then these people come in and snatch you or whatnot. So I went to the Armed Forces station. They gave me a bus ticket, sent me to Pensacola. I get to Pensacola, and they give me the option to either go to jail or take an undesirable discharge. Well, I wasn't going to jail because I didn't do anything. So I took the undesirable. I still stayed a month in holding in a two-story building, vacuuming, playing cards, and joking and all this. I came home and got with the Red Cross, and I had a guy that helped me. It took 2 years to get my uh, discharge upgraded. So then I went to school and everything. Everything was supposed to be fine as far as the government was concerned. I beat the United States Navy. They did an investigation and they found that I was mistreated. But that still had the PTSD in me, the post traumatic stress disorder. It's like I was hating white folks. And I didn't go as far as Malcolm X, but it caused me trouble on jobs because most of the jobs you got back then, it's like if a foreman or a supervisor would tell me something and he was white and he wasn't totally 100% right, oh, he's about to hear from me. He was going to get it. So, and then me giving it to him verbally or whatnot, then I lose a job. Now I got to go find another job. But I did not know, as Christina said, I had PTSD. Nobody mentioned PSTD back then. You see, I'm having trouble mentioning it now. So, but no, it's serious, man. And when I was talking to Chris one day about the Mocha Exodus thing, and she went to look it up and carrying on. But like I say, it resonates home with me because it's almost the same pattern. And I can imagine there are others, that go through this here, and who knows, they may have pulled a trigger somewhere. They may have just beat somebody to death or whatnot. So, this thing, I don't want to give the people the impression that, you come home and now you got this PTSD thing. Or you come home and people got to worry about you hating people or whatnot. I don't want to get that impression. It doesn't happen to everybody. Some people can tell you they've done 20 years. It's been beautiful. Now I have a big home. I get a check from the government. Oh, life is so pleasant. But you have those others who still got that bad discharge, can't do nothing, can't get nothing because it's going to follow you the rest of your life. So it's like when I talk to you guys on this podcast, trust me, I've been everywhere you've been. I don't have to lie to you about anything. I don't have to create a story. I don't really have to do much digging on anybody else's story, you know. But it's like you can go back as far as the Vietnam War. There was a general by the name of Westmoreland, and he decided that for the Vietnam and the Vietnamese, if he had a lot of troops, he could just wipe them out. So he petitioned Lyndon B. Johnson for more troops. He wanted like 260,000 more troops. Well, Johnson turned to Congress. Congress agreed. They ended up sending him 300,000 more troops. But what kind of troops were they? They were troops with no education. You didn't need a high school diploma, GED to get in. There were people with no morals, no standards. There were young kids. They were kids on the corner doing that. They're playing basketball. They pull up in the van and recruited these people. So now you have people in there that really, figure, well, hey, I got a career now. I'm in the military. But their whole mission was to send you over to Vietnam, put a rifle in your hand. And it's like once you finish boot camp or basic training, they were shipping you up to Vietnam. So now you get over there and you got people getting shot and killed next to you, but they got that opium over there. Hey, take some of this, shoot some of this, and it'll numb you up. You won't have to worry about seeing all this death, this violence. So now you come home, you either wounded physically or mentally.
With no
And
kind of skill training.
none. So now he's considered. Remember this name, General Westmoreland, because we will talk about him. I may have a chance in one of these podcasts. He's considered as the general who lost the Vietnam War. And with that, I'm gonna bring on Mr. Gary.
Hello, everybody. My name is Gary Lewis. I am a outreach case manager for Hope Incorporated. Has anyone ever heard of the DSM? This is a booklet that defines different types of mental illnesses, and it tells you what the illness is, the treatment for the illness, what to look out, the signs, and how can or if it can be eliminated. According to the DSM, PTSD is a psychiatric disorder. It means it's in your brain. You learn something from the experience of witnessing a life events, death, sexual assault, trauma, uh, anything that functions in your mind as horrible or something that does not normal, and it fuels of fear or dislike. It's just an ugly taste in your mouth. However, PTSD can be reversed and it can be solved. Some of the symptoms of PTSD, and for the sake of everything, I'm going to just talk about the veterans and symptoms. It could be isolation. It could be no longer interested in things that you did before. Uh, you avoid people. You don't want to be bothered. You think about different things that associated with the trauma that you had, and it bears up. So almost everything you think about is associated with PTSD, and it's a part of your mind. How you think it is, so it affects people in different ways. Some of the fallback from it from veterans will be homelessness. And then you have the suicide. People who don't think that it can go on any further. Nobody will be missed. Just like Christina talked about Mark Exit, where he sit there and he told everyone hello. This is a symptoms. Not always the same thing. Everybody don't go by the same outlook. They don't have that same perspective. So in his mind, saying goodbye, it was his last hurrah, but he's already made up his mind. He knew what he was going to do before he did it. And the sad part about it is that he didn't have anyone to talk to. This wasn't a world-renowned illness that people talk about. Back in that day, it was called shell shock. Then later it was changed to going postal. You didn't have that type of information. You didn't have therapists telling you, you know what, you can learn this and experience what you've learned and change it. All it is your mind telling you that this is a negative effect. To believe it or not, PTSD can also be treated by pills. But most of the common way that you can treat PTSD is by cognitive behavior therapy. It's when you see something and it associates you with pain, your mind have to reintroduce yourself to that pain and switch it over. It's not necessarily that something you're going to be with forever. But if people don't recognize that they have PTSD, you can't be cured. With children, PTSD with kids, for example, you might have seen it a long time ago, is where they ask the kids to play out the role. And they have a car or something, and they'll say, well, mommy told me to do this, mommy. They're acting out. This is a good way to start the treatment. But if you don't know you have PTSD, it'll go on. And it could lead to the suicide. It can lead to depression. It could lead to almost anything that deals with your mind. PTSD can struggle. My PTSD would be hurricanes. Like you guys, I said to two. One was Bessie in '65, and the other one was Katrina.
Oh, you
And
just told your age, Mr. Lewis.
oh, please don't go there. Well, I forgot you. It was just important that I get that point across. And what they did was, or what they do is, they send my PTSD will be our weatherman. His name's Nash Roberts. So when he got on television and told you to run, you were supposed to do it. And most people who didn't have money, who couldn't go anywhere, they want to, just sit back and just go head on and say, oh, it's going to pass. We did this before. But you have other factors. So he's my PTSD. Having to admit that you have it is because you have to recognize what the symptoms are. If you don't know what the symptoms are, you'll go along thinking that this is the right way. This is what I should do. In the same token with Mark X's is that she mentioned something that would go, it just might have been slightly over your head, is that they killed those two guys at Suno. And that was a racial tension back then. Back in the 70s, look, a lot of things we didn't do. We had to fight for them.
Excuse me, Mr. Lewis.
Yes.
The Navy has always been known to be the most prejudiced branch of the service. So that's what I say I can relate to that. But I agree with you totally. If the person who has PTSD does not realize, everyone else can see it, but they can't. So now he wants to isolate himself and he wants to get away. So you're hitting the nail dead on the head with that one. Like I say, I can see it. And, if you know anybody that's been in the military or whatnot, you can see their problem. But will they accept it? Well, the pride a lot of times will not allow. I'm sorry to interrupt you. Please continue.
Well, that's all right. No, but in the same token, those same people who see the PTSD are not going to walk up to you and say, "Oh, Robert, you got PTSD. You need to have help." And then next thing you want to avoid that person at all cost. Knowing me, she's just a fool. No, it's that it doesn't work like that. And the majority of people who are from the service are sexually assaulted. That's women. And they are too afraid to come up because what? This is a man-orientated army. Thank you. And to speak of something like that would be a distrust. I don't know, that doesn't happen here, but it does. And the people that suffer from it are the females, too afraid to say it.
Let me give you another statistics. It say females that were in Iraqi freedom or Afghanistan, 1 out of 4 will, not likely, will return with PTSD.
But in the same token, that PTSD can start at boot camp because again, it is a male oriented environment. So therefore, you don't have to go anywhere to be sexually assaulted. You'd be right there. And most women that experience this, they don't say anything. Our podcast 2 podcasts ago, Christina said it took her years before she could recognize it and say something because you were supposed to, what's the word? Suck it up and keep going. So
Suck
if you
it
have
up
that
and drive on.
all right. If you have that type of attitude, you don't fit, and you don't do that. You believe that you're not a part of the whole picture. You're not a part of the system because everybody else doing it. Why you can't do it? So with that in mind, also there's medication you can take for PTSD. Okay, and who's going to admit that they have it? Because the military is supposed to, you're the best of the best, this and that, and you hold a higher standard than most people, but it's not necessarily true. You need to admit it, understand, recognize it, and get help.
One thing that I can say in all honesty, in the military, we are programmed to think that we are better than other people.
That's exactly what I'm
I'm
saying.
better
Yeah.
than you because you're a civilian. And once you get out of the military and you start remembering, you start thinking, oh, wow, I'm a civilian now, that kind of takes away from your self-esteem a little bit. And I had to, like, I know for me, I had to figure out my importance in the world again. I felt like I had no purpose anymore because I wasn't in the Army anymore. I did almost 10 years in the Army. And when I was in the Army, I was proud. I used to walk, my chest sticking out. I was a little bitty thing and walking all with my chest sticking out with that uniform on. I was proud of that uniform. But then I realized that everybody doesn't respect that uniform the way I did. Everybody doesn't see that uniform as being something great the way I did. And just because I was in the military didn't make me any better than anybody else, because we're all humans. So that's another shocker right there. I mean, you go through shock when you come out of the Army or the military.
You were mentioning that there's medication and pills and stuff like that. And as Christina's saying, it's their pride sometimes. Once you done told the story of what happened to you in the military or what you witnessed or whatnot, once you told that story once or twice, nobody wants to hear it again. So now, rather than realize you have a problem and go to some doctor to get pills or whatnot, it's this thing called self-medicate. You go find the nearest alcoholic or the nearest drug addict. And once you buy the alcohol or the drugs, they're going to sit there and listen to you and they're going to agree with everything you're saying. So it becomes a continuous thing. Now you're addicted. So now your people, your friends that you thought when you came home were going to be the people to support you are the people trying to get away from you or telling you to stay away from them. And this it's self,
Loathing
yeah.
is how you feel about yourself. But
Mm-hmm.
my point is that if you don't recognize that you are sick mentally, and that's kind of hard to do because we don't have any disclaimers on ourselves. If you don't realize that, you're going to be in a cycle that won't ever stop. So again, the PTSD and any type of mental illnesses can be reversed. Not all, but it can be reversed, and it has to be reversed through the desire to want it, to recognize it, and to have someone, a professional standard, to sit down and create a system in which you can learn how to de-escalate how you think and look at something completely different and accept it. After Christina said what she was, you can't throw no water on her, you can't hurt her, she is out there. What else you gonna do? Except get help. Dr. Lewis, up to you.
Dr. J.
All right. Yeah, this is just
I know we
this has
blew
been
your
a lot
mind.
to take. I've been quiet, but yeah, I just love everything that y'all have talked about, and thank you, Gary, too, for that, for explaining what PTSD is, and I thank you, Christina, for explaining more about Mark Essex and PTSD. I'm not from here. I'll admit that. I'm sure y'all hear the accent. I'm from Georgia, and I'm slightly below 50 years old, so I'm just gonna put that out there.
She's the
So I
baby of
was
the group, y'all.
right. So I was completely unfamiliar with everything. So that's why I'm just sitting here riveted, by hearing what all happened. Like I said, that's just, very powerful just hearing that. And Robert, thank you too for your testimony. It's very profound. And, I'm glad that you were able to come out on top on that
Yeah.
and to get that honorable discharge that you so deserved.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
And
it just,
I only pray that the people who are watching us, like you
right,
say, it was interesting to you and a lot of things you had no idea about or whatnot.
right.
Uh, this is why we do this, right? So we can
Mm-hmm.
let people know the simplest thing. You're not the only one out there with this problem.
That's right.
Gary said there is help.
Right.
Christina say, hey, there's support. And
Right.
I'm telling you, you have to admit that what went on in the military, the camaraderie with the guy next to you and all that, is not necessarily going to happen out here in civilian life. So you pretty much, if you're angry in there, you're gonna come out here angry. It's only gonna take a couple of weeks for you people to get tired of hearing the same story. You know, it's like, oh Lord, he come again with that story about the military. So now you got to go find somebody. But now, I'm sorry to keep interrupting y'all.
No, you're
But
fine.
Dr. J, go ahead on, man.
Yeah, I actually, I'm glad you said that, actually, Robert. Because a lot of times, I'm not a veteran. Let me put that disclaimer out there. I do have a lot of family members and friends who are veterans, so I have somewhat of a glimpse into the culture. But um, I would say, as your average layperson, you don't understand that. You don't know exactly what's going on and and like Gary mentioned, you just what people used to refer to somebody as just shell shock. Maybe like, oh, don't set him off and stuff like that. But I had an uncle. They used to refer to him as that. He fought in the Vietnam War. He was my favorite uncle. Like, don't tell anybody else that, any of my other family members. But he was awesome, like I said. And I understood, that he had suffered through a lot, and there was a lot that he didn't disclose, he didn't say. So you don't understand that, and I would say you need to reach out to somebody who's a professional. Definitely, please contact your VA, your local VA. Speak to a mental health professional. I know in some cases people don't want to reach out, but please contact someone who's licensed. You need to have somebody who's reputable, who can understand, and who's willing to listen as well. I said, if one person doesn't work for you, find another one. I say search. Call 988.
Because that self-medicating ain't
Right.
the thing. Ain't
Exactly.
The thing.
I agree. It
Been
definitely
there,
is not.
done it all.
Right.
And I just gotta say, I started my recovery 10 years ago. I was on child number 5, marriage number 2. And I can tell you the recovery process, it's hard. It's hard work, but it can be done.
Yeah, look at me. Hey.
Yeah, you got me. Hey.
That's
So-
right.
So I'm gonna say this. I want to say something to all my women veterans and my women service members. There's this thing called avoidance. I never knew what avoidance was before someone explained it to me. My assault happened in 1988, and it wasn't until 2015 that, like I said, those 3 words caused such a reaction from me. And that means that from 1988 till 2015, I had just put it all in the back of my mind, forgot about it, move on, drive it up, and suck it up and drive on. Now, I was sucking it up, I was driving on. And when I had that type of reaction, that was a trigger for me. That's when a doctor told me that I had been going through avoidance. You avoid the subject. You avoid the experience. You avoid what happened to you. And that's not healing. You're not okay. You have to address what happened. And I can tell you to this day, I still have difficulty sleeping.
Uh-oh.
And Dr. J, back to you. I'm
sir.
just sitting here realizing that she has PTSD. I have PTSD, and we're married.
Right.
Lord have mercy. We need some help. And I'm not trying to self-meditate unless it's the Lord. And for Mr. Gary, Mr. Lewis, if you know anybody, be it religious, be it social, be whatnot, I'm telling you now, we're gonna need some help.
I'm glad you mentioned that. I was going to say that leads me into my next one. They actually have, if you're a combat veteran, they have the New Orleans Vet Center. They do have other locations. Let me see. They have centers in Baton Rouge, Alexandria, and Shreveport. But they offer counseling for PTSD. They also offer individual and couples counseling. This is all free. It's confidential. One of the things that I do like to point out, right? Free.
Yeah, you said the right word. Free.
Right. And I'll read this disclaimer too that they offer on their website. You're not required to be registered for VA healthcare, have a rating for a service-connected disability, or receive any other VA benefit to qualify for service. Okay. And another point to keep in mind is that your records are not disclosed unless there's a life-threatening situation. So the military can't access it, Like I said, Department of Defense, nobody can access your records at the vet centers. And if you also want to speak with like-minded combat veterans, you can go there, especially if you're feeling isolated. Like Mr. Lewis pointed out, that's one of the key things is isolation. You're replaying these events in your head, and it's a repeated cycle. It's over and over again, and that can send you spiraling into depression and anxiety.
Most vets, once they're out, childhood friends, you either don't have them no more, they don't last long because they don't give you that same connection that you had with the guys you were in the pit with. You were in the truck with, or you were in the gun mount or the tower. You don't have that same camaraderie because I knew they had my back, regardless to what. Out here in the real world, you may have my side, but you're not gonna have my back. But you're gonna want me to have yours because you know I'm about it.
Right.
And it's like, it's man, there's some stuff you have to deal with. So for you veterans out there, hey, look, take it from me, man. Just try to do it one day at a time and live for tomorrow. And tomorrow. And the tomorrow after that. And the tomorrow after that. Because, hey, for myself personally, I believe in the God of another chance. Nobody has the direction in a booklet to say, this is what you do. This is the way you go. That's over with out here. You got to pick yourself up and as Chris say, move on. What's next? You just get up the next morning and say, well, let me try this next month. Because believe me, there's always something to try. As Dr. J said and Mr. G said, hey, you got to make that first step. Right. I mean, you can't lay there and expect your mom to come pick you up like you're 6, 12 years old and go bring you somewhere. You can't just stay locked in a room because nobody understands what. You have to pick yourself up and make that first move and let people know, look, hey, I got PTSD. Man, I know I got PTSD. Man, something just ain't right. I want to kill everybody. That don't mean you're going to do it. But you know that thought runs across your mind. And then, far as you're concerned, you may feel, one of you guys said earlier, you may feel like, well, everybody would be better off if I wasn't here. No, you can't do that. You got to live for tomorrow because you don't know what's going to happen. You'll be jobless today. Get on the internet, put in a resume or whatnot. And guess what? Tomorrow you might get a call. Or the day after that, you might get that call. So, but if you kill yourself today, you get no more calls.
Please go to
I read somewhere years ago that it said when people used to jump off of buildings, I don't know how they know this, but they said 3 seconds after they jump off the building, they wish they had it. Now I don't know how they
I've
know
heard that before. Yeah, how would you know
I
that?
don't know how they know that.
Which are you midway asking them just to hang out the window, asking them
hey, how you feel?
I
mean, but hey, it's not. You can't do that. You got to realize what you're doing to the people that love you. Even though you got PTSD and as far as they're concerned, you're crazy, they still love you. They still got that love somewhere in there. Believe me, it's in there. And they're blaming it on the military. If that boy hadn't been to the military, he wouldn't be acting like that. And here again, I say it's a two-edged sword. Because you got some people come out there and they manage to go back to school or land into a good job, and whatnot. And it's like, well, he went to the military. He's doing good. So not all stories. We're not here to say that. We're here to help you guys who are feeling depressed. Because that's mainly what it's about. Because depression going to lead you to get somewhere alone. Because sometimes you can be your own worst enemy for what you think. So if you need the help, listen to Dr. J. Listen to Mr. Lewis. Listen to Christina. And you better listen to me. Because I've been there. And here I am today at 68 years old, trying to help you. So reach out to the Hope Center or these organizations. Nothing to be embarrassed about. It's just better off you will be tomorrow. Better off you'll be the tomorrow after that.
I gotta say, as we talked about isolation, in the Mark Essex story, when they, after it was all over, of course, they went to his residence and searched his apartment. and his apartment was in such disarray. It was nasty. The floors were greasy and everything. But the thing that just stood out the most was the fact that he had written all over the walls and the ceiling. He wrote uh, he wrote ugly things in both English and Swahili. Yeah, he took an African studies class when he was in school, and so he started learning the different dialects of the African languages, and Zulu and Swahili and stuff like that. And he had both in African language and in English. He had written racial slurs and all kinds of words, and just it was crazy. That shows that as he isolated himself, the more he isolated himself, the deeper inside he went, and the deeper his distress was, and he just I do
If he
believe
put it out there,
he really
if he
lost
put
it.
it out there, Christina, that means it was a manifesto. He wanted people to know he had a reason. There's a rhyme there. It's called a manifesto. That means that I'm going to do this, but I want y'all to know why I'm doing this. So it's like,
Well,
I'm not going to clean it up because I'm not going to be here too long.
But
Well,
here
the thing
again,
about it is, he had written a letter to WWL TV and told them what he was going to do. That he was out to kill as many police officers and white people as he could because of what happened at Southern University. And unfortunately, the people at the TV station didn't open the letter until days after this happened. So,
look,
because they get so much mail. So it kind of backfired because he let them know what he was about to do.
if a person's going to do something, they're going to do it. A lot of times when people get to writing stuff around and calling people, telling, they're reaching out for help, but they don't get that help. So they continue with that plan. But initially, a lot of times when people are shouting out, "Hey, I'm gonna go do this, I'm gonna do that," they shouting out for help. They're screaming for it, but nobody responds.
So please know there are resources available. Please don't ever feel that you're alone.
And you don't have to have a honorable discharge, which is said, Dr. Lewis, you can be what?
Right.
You can
It doesn't matter
anything.
what your status is. Even if you're unsure whether or not you will be approved to receive services from them, go anyway. Call them, give them a call and see, because they're willing to work with you and to see what they can do to help to get you that help.
But
I'd say
also,
reach
let
out to
me
the VA, reach out to the Vet Center, reach out to 988, the crisis line. And even if you're not in an active crisis, you can still call 988, or you can access their chat line. Even if you just want to share some good news, if you need somebody to talk to, like I said, they're available 24/7. It's confidential. You have trained counselors that you're speaking with. So I say, please reach out
One,
to somebody.
let me
option
add this
one
too.
are actual veterans too.
Right.
Let me add this too. As I mentioned earlier, as well as Mark X's, if you get a dishonorable discharge and you know you were innocent and you were just wrongly accused, you can get help for that. You don't have to sit home and say, "Man, they did me wrong."
Right.
Go to the Red Cross. Go to New Orleans Legal Assistance or something. Even though it's the military, somebody will direct you to what to do. I had to write letters back and forth. Every time they wrote me, I wrote them back for a year and a half. And they finally came down to New Orleans on the lakefront at the time and had a review board. And they stood up and they said, "Mr. Augustine, on behalf of the United States Navy, we want to apologize." Man, I stood there with tears rolling out my eyes. I said, they actually did a real investigation. So don't give up. Even when you go to Social Security and you're trying to get it, and they're going to deny you because in Louisiana, 90% of the people that go to Social Security are denied their first time. It's a click. You have to get an attorney. Then you have to go to their doctors, and then you got to go to their doctors and all that before anything happens. But if you give up, it's like, man, I'm not going through all that. I'm not doing all that. Then you get what you get, how you get it. And that ain't always the right way. There are ways to go by. It works. Well, I'm a witness.
Right.
It works.
Stuck with it and you persevered.
Yeah. Still going through some stuff, but hey, look,
That's
it
called
works.
life.
I know.
That's called life.
Exactly.
That's called life.
Exactly.
Welcome to it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I know with my own PTSD, I know some of the symptoms. One of the symptoms that I resonate with is angry outbursts, and my children had to deal with my anger. I wasn't. I do not have angry outbursts anymore, Robert Augustine.
No,
Y'all
it's
don't
not.
see
It's
him.
not.
Y'all
It's
don't
P.
see him getting
It's
closer and closer.
PTSD. It's PTSD. It's PTSD. But she did say Mr. Lewis and Dr. J. But it is PTSD. You don't have angry outbursts. It's
Yeah.
PTSD. Mr. Lewis describes some of the symptoms
true.
of that. I
Right.
see them. I see them.
And that, right.
Right.
Yes. Okay.
And your
So,
husband?
as a veteran, I had my first child when I was 24 years old, and I was still in the military. He was born in Landstuhl, Germany, and my oldest son is 33, and my oldest daughter is 29. And that's the first two of my 5 children that I gave birth to. So my first 2 children, they had to deal with, they witnessed my PTSD. My middle children, my 2 girls that are in the middle, they also witnessed it, but they were much younger. They were like babies. And as they got older, I got softer. And my oldest 2 always tell me, "You're not the same mama that raised us." Well, I'm not. My anger, because I was angry, and I didn't even realize how angry I was. I was angry. I was one of those people that would just snap for any little thing. I guess now they would call it being bipolar. You know, my mood would just change like that for no reason. And my kids were affected by that. I have to thank God, the God that I serve, because I know everybody does. Everybody has their own beliefs. My belief system is God, and I can only say that God kept my children sane, because dealing with me, they should have been crazy. Now they are a little Looney Tunes, but they should have just been, they should have had, they could have had some really adverse effects from dealing with my anger, my not sleeping, my depression. I went through all of these symptoms, my flashbacks, I was angry. I was angry at the world. I was angry at the military. I was angry at the people that I served with, because I felt like they turned their backs on me. It was hard. And as hard as it was for me, I now realize how hard it was for my children. And now that they're grown, I'm able to talk to them about it. Now that I realize it and recognize it, I'm able to talk to them about it. Now, when they were kids, they couldn't come to me and tell me, "Mama, you got PTSD. Mama, something wrong with you." They couldn't do that because they'd have got tore up. But now that I recognize that there was something wrong, I can talk to them, and I've apologized to my children and explained to them that I was going through some things that they should never have been affected by. And they're like, "It's okay. We're good. We understand." But the reason they understand is because people talk about it more now. This was, my first child was born in 91. Back then, people didn't talk about it. Even, we talk about in 1973, there was no such thing as PTSD. You were shell shocked, and everybody just thought you were crazy. Well, even in 1991, people weren't talking about PTSD. That was a new thing. That's when and it wasn't called PTSD. It was called the Gulf War Syndrome. Oh, you need to go get tested for the Gulf War Syndrome. But the conversation was started. And with that conversation being started, my children were able to understand that I experienced some things, because I don't talk about my military experience a whole lot. I don't talk about, my children think that I was some kind of CIA operative somewhere because everything's so secret. And I'm like, it's not a secret. I just choose not to talk about a lot of things. And one day you'll understand why, But yeah, the PTSD affects not just you, but it affects your family. It affects your friends. It affects your community. It affects the people that you work with. If you're somebody's supervisor and you have PTSD and you're just angry all the time, what kind of supervisor you think you are? I don't think you're a good one.
Also with PTSD, you have what is it called? Intrusive thoughts. It's always negative things you're thinking about. You even dream in that sense. Besides avoidance, you avoid things that used to make you happy. You don't want to be bothered. I have this to do. You just make an excuse. But one of the most popular symptoms of PTSD would be hypoarousal. That includes symptoms of feeling easy, start being constantly on guard, always worry about what was going on. You didn't have that to worry about, difficulty concentrating and experiencing sleep disorder. Uh, you also have changes in moods. Your mood swing will be, I'm over here, I'm over there. It's not necessarily bipolar. It's how you feel at that time. And it can come on at any time. It doesn't have anything to do with your blood pressure or the type of medication you're on. It's just that again, I have to reiterate, PTSD is a mind disease, basically. And once you get that established and go somewhere or have someone treat you, the only thing they will be doing is rerouting how you think in your brain. That way, if negative thoughts come on, you have to go ahead, you have to figure out a way to turn that around. Most people say, well, you count to 20, you do breathing exercises, and it helps. But in the same token, it's going to be a uphill battle if you don't have professional help because your family's going to suffer. They'll see it. Christina, I'm surprised he didn't try to kill you in your sleep. But
Right.
it's one of those things. It's going to constantly be there because you are not aware of it. It's in your mind. It's how you think, is what you perceive. And in order to combat that, you need professional help. So if you think it's like this and it's like that, have somebody to talk to. Confide. Get those stereotypes out. Oh man, it's supposed to cry. You better believe I'll boo-hoo all the way to the house. And I want you to know why. So it's not necessarily, it's how you believe. It's what you can do to help yourself and your family. They need that help because you're suffering and not realizing you're bringing everybody else in that loved you or surrounded by you.
And I just have to say, I just have to say that when we talk about PTSD being reversed or you being healed from PTSD, that doesn't mean that you forget about what happened and I'm just so happy go lucky all the time. No, it means that you still get triggered. You still have certain triggers that will remind you of that episode, that traumatic episode in your life. But being healed or being delivered or having it reversed just means that you've learned how to cope with it and you
It's
don't
called
let it
treatment.
consume you.
It's called treatment. That's what it is, a treatment. Again, you have someone who's an expert that make you look at something differently. Again, this is in your brain. Nobody else is going to experience what you experience to that extent. It's a
Exactly.
treatment. So when you see this happening and you used to just cringe and you talk to someone who can help you to look at it from another angle, that's a treatment.
Yes.
You know, it
And I
won't
can
ever
tell
go
you
away.
30 years ago, like when my wonderful husband says something that would irritate me, 30 years ago, I would have snapped and I'd have been cussing him I'd have just talked to it would have been something ugly. But those of you that know me now, if he says something that irritates me, I just say, well,
Not the way
sweetheart,
you look at
that
I
wasn't
think
very
he begs to
nice. I
differ.
didn't enjoy that. That's you are muted, dear.
Oh man.
So, the
This
person
facial
I
expression you
was,
just said to me.
the person I was 30 years ago and the person I am now are
Right.
two totally different people. The person that raised my first two children and the person that raised my last three, well, still raising the last one, are two totally different people. Why? Because I started learning how to cope, because I discovered, first of all, that I had PTSD. I realized it. And once I recognized it, I was able to seek treatment, and seeking treatment, I got hope. I had hope. And having hope is the first step. Having hope that you can be okay with this. That's the first step. But my
Yeah,
dear
it's something
husband,
I
I
need.
love him so very much. But
But
y'all know how his mouth is. He can say something sometimes.
We
He be
know.
like,
Sorry, Robert. We know. Y'all are so, I'm just saying.
me,
Y'all
it's
are so
about me.
cute. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. I'd say I love the discussion. How everybody's bringing their personal experiences into this too. But it does impact not just you, but everybody who's around you. Like you said, in the case of Mark Essex, that affected the entire community. That impact was felt not just in New Orleans, but everywhere. Just getting to witness that. And like you said, Christina, in your own life, that could have impacted your children. And some people, they go through what's called adverse childhood experiences. I suggest family counseling. Like, please get counseling for yourself and your kids, because you never know. Sometimes the children can experience PTSD, because PTSD is not isolated just to veterans or military active duty military service members, I should say. Anybody can experience PTSD. So that's something that I would say, if your family, your wife, your husband, your children, or anybody is saying that they need professional help, you could reach out to Metropolitan Human Services Authority here. It depends on what parish you're in or what state you're in, but they do have resources available. Um, Oftentimes they accept insurance. If you don't have insurance, they have Medicaid. You can apply for that. They have Jefferson Parish Authority. I suggest that people reach out to them if they don't want to go to the VA. But the VA has a lot of great resources. Like I say, that would be the first stop that I would recommend, because they have a lot of different programs too. They have the Intimate Partner Violence Program. I've had a talk with them, and they were telling me how great the program, and I definitely agree, because like they said, they offer individual and family counseling as well. So you can bring your family to the VA and have a discussion with them. And they said it's not judgmental, it's non-judgmental. So they're not saying, oh, well, you did this, and accusing. They're providing that listening ear and telling you, in some cases, talk therapy may work. You may not actually need medication. There are some people who do need medication. And I say, if you need that, please take it. Please discuss that with a healthcare professional. But in some cases, just talking that out or reenacting, like Mr. Lewis mentioned, will help you to have coping mechanisms and to actually receive that treatment that you need in order to not be so triggered, by by anything, by everyday life, because it actually does affect your everyday life. There are certain places you may avoid because you're afraid of being triggered by that, or smell, like Christina mentioned. There might be a certain smell or anything, but this is the kind of thing that you would discuss with with a licensed counselor or a psychologist or a psychiatrist. Like I said, just make sure you're getting some professional help, because you don't have to suffer in silence. There are resources available. Like I said, not just, if you can't do it for yourself, then do it for your family.
yes.
I urge people to do that, because it does impact them.
Well, I'd like to thank everyone for tuning in, and hope you guys got something out of it. We covered a lot, and truly from the heart and from my experience, I know I'm not the only one that's been through that. Like I say, the story of Mark Exit, man, I totally familiarized my story with that, just not going as far as he did. Uh, it's like I live for tomorrow, and I'm hoping whoever out there is watching and feel like you need a hand, if you don't have a pen or anything to write down what Dr. Lewis said, come back to the podcast, man. Listen to it again and again and again, and take the steps that we're telling you. I mean, if you feel I'm pushing you, yeah, I'm pushing you to save you. to stop you from making a permanent solution to a temporary problem. Okay, so hey man, look, hope you enjoyed it. Hope you got something out of it. God bless you. Stay tuned for the next episode.
So if today's episode resonated with you, please, 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 please like, share, and subscribe. You can also listen to us on Go via Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or our iHeartRadio. Now I'm gonna tell you on iHeartRadio, you don't get to see our beautiful faces. It's just sound. So come back to YouTube or go somewhere where you can see us. We want to talk to you. We want you to know who you're talking to, who you're listening to. And remember, always remember, you are not alone. No matter what the battle, no matter what the burden, you are still standing. That's power and that's resilience. And here, right here, you have a community that's willing to stand with you every single step of the way. Until next time, take care of yourself and each other.